after this week. I think that the decision needs to be made sooner rather than later. And then we can rework the reserve fund policy to address the fact that the board wanted to keep a year operating expense in the account and X amount for an emergency reserve. Yeah, and so then that would address all the excess funds that are so controversial right now.
Anybody else have any questions on the phone?
Well, if you wanna do a I mean, I can come Monday, I have another meeting at 5:30.
Okay.
I can come at 5. I mean, I'm not trying to tell you what time to have it, or I can come at another time.
I will, after I know, I'll contact you all
Yeah, so.
and
I probably
let you
can
know.
come at 5.
Who you
come
want?
earlier.
Earlier?
I mean, I'll be okay passing, I mean, because it is for the Board of Health, we had to pass a measure based on whether a law that passed in the State
Okay,
House.
same kind of-
It said pending the approval of, the state law, they got passed, then our decision will go into effect.
Yeah, and you can
Do it that
do
way?
it that way.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
way.
Well, that's fine too, if that's better than everybody
I
can
mean,
have.
I'm okay with doing it now.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's all right with everybody else.
Do it and make the motion pending.
Pending.
The results of the vote. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
I'm okay with that.
Okay, so I need
Yeah.
a motion.
So,
How to word that,
so
but-
I'll make a motion that we go ahead and pay off, pending the passing
Of the bill.
SB 160.
As soon as we know the
If
results.
Senate Bill 167 is overridden this week,
Yeah.
the veto's overridden,
Yeah.
then pay off the bonds.
Okay. Okay.
If the, because of the, then pay it off.
Motion made by Mark, I need a second.
I second.
Second, Mr. Alderman, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion
Okay,
carries.
that keeps us.
Oh, you have to-
Yeah.
Worry about it.
Yeah,
Because you can come probably.
Yeah, all this is Kirk, right in it to.
So Dan Miller's stuck on the road, he's coming this way, but we're ready to skip to number 5, give him a change, board that day.
Well, I already gave you some of it. So,
Good lie, that bird.
yeah, we'll know if the veto's overridden Wednesday or Thursday this week. We have, strong program, we had 60 programs this month, or in March, sorry. In March with almost 2,500 in attendance, and that's live.
That's live.
In person.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great.
So,
Wow.
good job, Dana.
That's really good for something that's not used in the county. Susan, make sure you make note of that.
Yeah, I thought it was 35.
Wait,
35
you said
in
that,
it?
what, 25.
25,
We'll be
sorry.
answering-
No,
Give me
it's
time,
it's
Susan, I'm an old woman.
2,400.
I was giving you credit, Dina.
2416 to be exact. She
Okay,
said in-
2416.
In person.
Yeah,
In the month of March.
So virtual.
That's just programs, that's not people just coming in the library.
Yeah,
They're-
Right.
that's in person, so
Well, we're
virtual.
up to, what, 6 or 7 preschool classes now with the
Wow.
music and movement coming in. I'm doing
The Head Start comes
Wednesdays,
down.
Thursdays, and Fridays. They're
Really?
back to back all
Oh,
day.
that's awesome.
So,
And I
Yeah.
saw where y'all did the little seed thing with the Head
Mhm.
Start, that's nice.
Yeah, and Louisa East contacted Dina today to start coming down for in-person programming again. So now that a lot of these restrictions are
Yes.
lifted,
Changes things.
we're seeing more people in here. We had 16 virtual programs with over 5,000 in attendance, unique attendance on those in March. And then the self-directed activities, which we always have out here. So KDL, that was part of our annual report this year, is to quantify self-directed programs, take and makes, what we
Yeah, take-
call
yeah.
them. So we had 53 take and makes, and we had over, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to do your math real quick.
those lines confuse me.
Oh, we had 3,000 participants in
In the take-
those, yeah. And so that can be, that's not just here, that can be take and make that Tammy does at the nursing home, at the seniors.
Okay.
That's,
Unique,
Right.
yeah, so.
So
So is Tammy back doing a lot of business?
Yeah, she's getting back out there. She's working on upping her homebound, because we've lost a few people, not for bad reasons, but maybe they had surgery and they were able to get out, and now they've come off. So she's working on her homebound, and she's still doing her outreach every week.
So the homebound is actually walking to their home?
Yeah, so it's people who can't physically get to the library. Yeah. So she goes to their homes, and it's not just books, it might be crafts, materials, movies,
She just delivers them? to
just
them?
delivers them. Yeah. She has a lot at Ray Williams Villa. She also has a lot out in the county, too.
So it's kind of a mini.
So we service our county.
It's kind of a mini.
Home health.
It
Library
is,
health, really.
kind of like Meals on Wheels
Yeah, yeah.
for a
Well,
library.
Sometimes she
And
takes
she
snacks.
takes meals,
It's like,
too.
I mean, lunches all week, what's left will go to the county.
Yeah, when we have leftover snacks, when we feed or meals, she takes those too. Yeah. Let's see, what else do I have for the update? Open records request. I filed an open records request with the county, with the fiscal court. I filed 2. They weren't responded to in the 5 days that the statute requires. So I filed an appeal with the Attorney General, and he wrote a letter back to me and to the fiscal court, so they have 5 days to respond to the Attorney General for the open records request.
And when was that?
When
So
was
they
my
have 5 days
request?
from what date?
April 5th.
So that's already.
Now, yeah.
You still ain't got your stuff.
No, I didn't get any response. When you get an open records request, you have 5 days to respond to
This
it.
tell you, we're right for another 10
Yes.
days.
Yeah, you have to
We've been through
respond.
that before, too.
You remember,
Oh,
and you don't have to have the material in 5 days, but you have to respond within 5 days and say,
Oh.
I received your request, we'll have the material ready on this date, it will be 10 cents a page, or, some organizations charge for your costs. So we didn't get a letter for either of those requests.
Any patient in through the house, we don't have to do that too, do they? They get everything patient down there, they do.
Yeah. And so, the reason that the request was filed was because of the testimony in front of the Senate committee about misappropriation of our funds, and that we had the same amount of funds as the county, and we received the same amount of tax dollars as the county. So I asked for their financial records from January 2019 to present. Yeah, so I can do the math. So anyway, it's with the Attorney General now, and he'll make a decision on when they need to comply with that. That's all I have.
So is that something you have to get back with the Attorney General, or will they?
Nope, they'll issue a decision by May 2nd. Yeah. They ask for a response from the agency, and they review it, and then they issue their decision
So they can decide that it's not.
if it's in violation of the statute. Yeah.
And it should be, because it's all black and white, that should be a problem.
It's very black and white. So when we received an open records request in October from attorneys about our construction project, I responded in 5 days, and it was a substantial amount of information they requested. I gave myself 2 weeks to get them that information. I sent it digitally, I did not send it paper and charge, so. It would have been, yeah.
It would have been a lot of copies.
Yeah.
So give us an update on that house bill. So January 1st, if everything goes through, what can happen, what will happen? So I can make sure.
County judges would have the authority to appoint trustees. They would no longer have to follow the recommendations of the board. So that process would stay the same. The board would recommend 2 names, they would send those to the Department of Libraries, they would verify that they are citizens of Kentucky, they would send those 2 names to the county judge. If they didn't approve of those names, they would appoint whoever they wanted to the board. Yeah, and then also, that's the biggest concern, but then the other concern is they can use our funds and our buildings for educational institutions.
They see fit for education.
And there was a great article that came out today in the Lexington Herald. I don't know if you've read it. Did you get a chance to read it?
Yeah.
That was the same reporter that wrote the first article. He called me last week and said he was going to do a second article. And he really did his homework this time on this issue. I mean, he covers from Pike County up to here on what's at stake if the bill is overridden, the veto's overridden.
He called me for comment, but I told him a little bit too late. I mean, he should have been doing this 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Of course, you can't wait till something passes, and then once it's
Yeah.
passed, well, I don't like that. Well,
Yeah.
it's too late, you know?
Yeah.
So, I didn't give him no comment, didn't have nothing to say.
Problem is that Ray Jones is feuding with the Pikeville.
Yeah, that's.
He-
the
Oh, Ray
catalyst.
is? I didn't
Yes,
know
he
that.
is.
Oh, my gosh. I ain't
They're
heard
their
that's-
that.
downtown branch.
Yeah,
Was he feuding with them over his?
he's saying
Same thing?
they've spent too much money.
I didn't heard that.
And the University of Pikeville wants their downtown branch, and the library doesn't want to give it up because it's still used so frequently. And so when they wouldn't give it up, then Ray Jones, hey, you made it.
Made it.
Got on the beach, well, just pick a seat, any seat.
Okay. So, if that all goes through like that, the State Department Library, those you all
Yeah.
have structure, will they exist, or will they make a way them to?
That's questions we have, you know.
Who pays them? The state?
Yeah, taxpayers. And how will that be structured? Because right now, we operate like teachers. We're required to be certified librarians, and we have to maintain certification, have so many CE hours. And, you know, how will that work? If you have a board here that, you know, makes different staffing decisions, how will that happen? Right now, everybody here is certified except for one person. She'll be certified after the semester, I think. So we're all certified, we all meet the credentials that we have to be certified librarians. Was that gonna change? You know, there's so many great areas if this passes.
So all their money comes from the taxpayers' state, like everything else? They're hard by the state,
They're
they're paid by
allocated
the
so
state.
much
Yeah.
funding,
I'd say
yes.
the state cut that out, 'cause that's probably
And
gonna
they cut our state aid 2 years ago, you know, we don't get any state funding for public libraries anymore. We said, okay. Then in 2021, libraries, agreed to, it's kind of a gentleman's agreement. We're not gonna push these other issues, but we'll agree that in order to adopt a rate above the compensating rate, we'll need fiscal court approval. Okay, we'll bend on that, and that wasn't good enough. So here we are now with, no, we want complete control of the library board and funds. You know, Dan.
Yeah, they're
You're on
fixing
those
problems
people.
that don't exist. David Thayer is my state senator.
Oh,
He's
Lord help you.
He's one of the leaders of take away control from the people who run things and put it in the hands of either the state, not the state legislature, or the elected county judge. And he just, I keep saying, Damon, please tell me examples of libraries that have misspent money or are out of control. Well, that's not the point. They could be. And I say, well, Damon, I'll give you 20 examples of county judges who are crooks and steal money and get caught and you know, doesn't mean they all are. It just means there are many more examples of county governments that have too much power, that can do things without transparency, abusing money. And I said, tell me, where's the lack of transparency? The names are sent to the state can vet them if they have a problem, the state sends them to the judge chooses either one, even if the library says, I prefer this one, the judge can choose the other one. and you're fixing a problem that doesn't exist. And it's all about the money. It's step one of figuring out how to get the money, get control of the money, and spend it on roads and salaries and political favors. And they almost admit it. I mean, they almost will come right out and say that. But, you know, some counties are great. The county judge runs the water board and the fire trustees, and they all are nominated, and the judge picks them. And, you know, we have like 5 or 6 boards in Scott County that are the property assessment appeals board.
Yeah.
So if you think your property is assessed too high, you can go to the appeals board, and they're independent and they can lower it. And those are all appointed by the county judge, and you apply, and in our case, he picks it. And, you know, those are fine, but none of those boards have money. None of them are taxing authorities. And in eastern Kentucky and southern Kentucky mostly, and far western Kentucky, where the county judges are more the biggest, most powerful person in the county, they control the budgets, they, you know, every member of their family's on the payroll, that's where the abuse happens. And, you know, the proposed amendments brought it back from, oh my God, what are we gonna do? They brought it back, but not far enough. You know, there's ultimately, the judge can just continue to deny, and then the judge can ask fiscal court to say, I'm not getting good candidates, give me, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but, you know, I don't like any of the candidates they send me, I want to pick my own. And if fiscal court goes along with the judge, then there's no recourse. And I worry mostly about what do they do next to get the money. And then do they start saying, we want to appoint a board of political appointees to review the books on the shelves?
Yep. Censorship is the next
And,
issue.
you know, that's a great way to get elected in some places, is to say we're going to take all the dirty books out of the library. So, I don't know. I know KDLA is mounting an effort to get people to not vote for the veto override, and they're mounting an effort to get the word out. KDLA is in a bad spot. They're a state-appointed agency and can't
That's what we
be
were just
out
talking about.
advocating for
Yeah.
this being a bad thing. Plus, they cut their budget so much over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Remember when we had 8? Do we have 8 regional
Regionals.
directors? And now we have 2 for the whole.
They just split the whole state.
How long has it been since you've had anybody in one of your meetings?
Oh, gosh, 3 years
Yeah.
maybe? Yeah.
And we used to have somebody in our meeting every
meeting.
meeting, or at least every other month.
Yeah.
And you know, they're afraid for their jobs.
Mhm.
They answer to a cabinet secretary who's a political appointee. That, you know, and they're not afraid of the governor. The governor's in this particular case, the governor's.
Yeah.
But you know, people that are political appointees are afraid to go out on a limb for good things. So.
And here's an interesting caveat. Somebody on the listserv asked, can we see a log of all the phone calls that were made to legislatures in opposing Senate Bill 167? Because we know there were a lot across the state. Conveniently, last year, this legislature exempted themselves from open records request.
right.
Yeah, so we can't view that log now.
Right.
We can't view how many constituents called their representatives and said, this is insane, I'm against it.
Been planning for a while, and that's when they may wave up a little members.
Yeah. Well, Damon is they've reached the point where the Republicans control the House and the Senate so much that about the medical marijuana bill, and whether you're for it or not is irrelevant. Damon acknowledged the majority of my constituents are for this bill, but I'm personally against it, so it won't get a vote.
yet they continue to elect these officials who
Yeah.
go against us.
Yeah,
That's where we need to start getting.
I mean, they're taking away public assistance, they're ending unemployment, which, yeah, it'll end it for the people who are taking advantage. It'll also end it for all the people who need it. And in counties like this that have a high unemployment rate, when that passes, if they override the governor's veto and all that, there's gonna be a whole lot of people in eastern Kentucky hurting bad.
This is gonna be a financial bloodbath.
Yeah. And so, are you gonna vote for these people again? Apparently so.
They always get elected.
Yeah, but-
So, yeah, I don't know. I didn't expect it to pass because there were a lot of people who told a lot of people, a lot of state senators and representatives told their constituents they were gonna vote against it and then
And they
did.
voted yes. Yeah.
And they're saying, well, they made all these amendments that made it so that it's not political. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's political. There's no way around it. And, but it's about the money. They want to then be able to say, well, the library has money in the bank, we're gonna give that to the school system because they need a new elementary school.
I've heard that a lot.
Yeah.
And that's what they're headed toward. Then they can spend that money they were gonna spend on schools, on roads, or charter schools, or whatever. So, I guess the worst case scenario is it stays in place, and everybody who's a trustee now serves out their term. And you still submit your names to KDLA, and, your judge will kick them back, and you'll submit 2 new names, and he'll kick them back, and then he'll get fiscal court to approve him nominating who he wants.
We better have a good Christmas party, it's about beer life.
Oh.
Come to this one.
I don't know why the construction industry didn't get in there and lobby harder. Because
Yeah.
libraries with money are using it to build things.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so everybody who builds things, municipal buildings, schools and libraries, should have been lobbying the state, don't do this.
Yeah.
Because do you think anybody's gonna build anything in the near term?
Go ahead and done
You'll have the money, but fiscal court won't let you spend it. You wanna build a library that costs $2 million and you've got it in the bank,
Yeah.
but fiscal court says no because you have to get their permission.
Because the bill cap's at $1 million now.
The bill cap's $1 million. You can do renovations, you can do additions. And they also took away the unanimous board. It has to be a unanimous board vote to spend it, and a unanimous fiscal court. They took that away.
Yeah, that was an amendment, yeah.
Yeah,
It
so-
was a unanimous originally.
Yeah, because unanimous, that means the fiscal court
Yeah.
would, all the judge would have to do is have one person vote no, and the library would never be able to spend the money. I mean, spend it $500,000 at a time, or $499, or whatever the legal language ends up being. Which means you could add on a meeting room, or you could renovate parts of the library without getting their approval, but it doesn't, you wouldn't be building a whole new building. It's sad. I mean, Kentucky already has a bad reputation. And this just makes it worse.
It's a sad, if it's not, if it is over, it's a sad day for Kentucky libraries. Yeah. We'll never operate or function the same.
Yeah. And you won't be able to attract good people. Library science is already a hard.
Yeah, that's what John just asked, and I talked about the KDL, we have to be certified librarians and make certain qualifications and take so many classes, and people don't realize all the qualifications that go into being a certified librarian. And everybody here is, except for one, and she'll be finished this semester, so.
And we get people complaining about how much we pay in Scott County. And they say, well, you pay more than teachers get. Well, teachers are 10-month contract. And so, you know, if you annualize that, because our employees work 12 months out of the year, it's not an apples to apples comparison. And by the way, teachers are underpaid, so, you know, you,
But that's not the case in every county.
no, that's not, yeah. So I don't know, it worries me that what are they gonna start looking at next and trying to pick apart? And
Well, they're deprofessionalizing education.
yes,
I mean, it's the same thing. I raised Cain, we're gonna have a massive teacher shortage in this state. So, legislator, so don't worry, we've got it fixed. We've got 8 alternative certification tracks. None of them's worked.
yeah.
Created over the last, I don't know, 15 years. So they created a 9th one. And basically, it says, well, you just go to college for about a semester, and then we'll put you right in the classroom, and you'll get college credits just by doing the job. Well, that's deprofessionalizing. And the next stage will be to starve the districts so that, you know, they pay less. I mean, this is just, it's an across-the-board attack on anybody that provides services to the public.
And, you know, state after state that have passed these charter school laws have failed. I mean, they fail everywhere. So why is it gonna work in Kentucky? Failed miserably in West Virginia, failed miserably in Indiana. The cost of running these things per student is 10 times what it costs public education. And yet, they're following those same laws. And I don't know.
So before you came, we addressed our reserve fund policy. So we still have a bond from 2008 project. We just received the construction grant funds still. I'm sure you're familiar with that. We
Yeah.
still receive the $150,000 every year. So before we decided to do this capital project, we looked at our funds and said, should we pay that off first? When we did the math on the grant money and on how much we would save refinancing, $250,000 is what we saved, we decided, no, we'll continue to make the payments. With this pending this week, they approved to go ahead and pay that. Yeah, just to go ahead and pay the bonds and
I think
have that
that's
much
wise because they're gonna
less
find ways to
excess
take the money out of the
Yeah.
bank.
It's better than going down the road than the library had to worry about how you want to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Whoever it equals those capabilities.
yeah, so the bond will be paid. This building was paid in cash, so
How
we're
much do
being
you?
punished for being fiscally irresponsible.
We have that same conversation. In Scott County, we save and build. We don't borrow. And they complain that, well, you've got so much money in the bank. Well, we're saving to build a branch now. And you don't want us to borrow money, do you? Well, no, you can't borrow money. Well, then the only way to do it is operate the library on less than we get, save some percentage of what we get every year, put it in the bank, and when we have enough, we'll build a branch. But you can't win. They
That was one of the arguments, that there wasn't a satellite library somewhere else, that the money could have been used in Blaine.
Yeah, and so we referenced our strategic plan, our first one we did with you, and said, here are the population projections, here is the census data. You know, the support is not there to have a brick and mortar facility.
Yeah.
We've been down this road how many times now? Are we looking at other options? Yes. But a brick and mortar building, that's why we did a strategic plan, so we could get those answers. That's why you're back here again, so we can look for the next 5 years. That's gonna look a lot different than it
It's gonna,
did
yeah, it's
for
gonna look
those
a lot
first
different
5.
than it would have even
Yeah.
just 2 months
Yep.
ago. Yeah. Well, what no one in those positions wants to think about or wants to admit is capital cost of a branch is not even the biggest expense, because that's a one-time, we spend $2 million and build a really nice branch. That's money we had in the bank, it's now money gone. But it's gonna cost us $200,000 a year to fully staff. And to buy books, we have to have new books there, we have to have new computers, and
Yep.
where's that gonna come from?
Yeah.
And we don't wanna have to raise taxes to be able to staff a branch in Sadieville or Stamping Ground, just because you want us to have one there, because it's gonna cost per service 10 times what it costs here, because everything's here, and everyone can come here, and, that's the responsible way to expand, is say we can't expand until the local population tax base, enough people and property owners in that area pay enough property taxes to support running it. And that's not likely to happen even in Scott County, where we're growing like crazy. Those areas are growing a little bit. Stamping Ground and Sadieville are little bitty towns. And so we're talking about a super bookmobile, like a RV with a pop out. And it goes and is in Sadieville every Monday, all day. And is in Stamping Ground every Tuesday, all day. And is in northern Georgetown, our low-income area, every Wednesday, all day. So you know that the library will come to you. Well, that has a driver and a librarian and an assistant. And we're providing a branch in 5 different areas. And that may be our solution because of the carrying cost of staffing.
Yeah. And we tried that here. That's the new argument. Why don't you have a bookmobile that goes to these areas? We have the numbers, we have the data. It didn't work. It didn't work for us. But there are other alternates. There are kiosks.
Yeah.
There are, numerous options that we are going to look at for those rural areas. Because every county, as you know, is different.
Yeah.
People respond differently in Eastern Kentucky than they do in Central Kentucky to services. So.
And you've got to, for those kiosks to work, you've got to have a business in that community that's open most of the time, that has power, that has lights, that has parking. We had a kiosk in the Stamping Ground, and the store closed. And a use of that kiosk went to nothing, because people were using it because they were going to the store. Oh, the library kiosk is right there. I'll go order a book. Mm-hmm. And when the store closed down, people stopped going. And what people really want they want to be able to pick a book out of the machine and take it home right there.
Yeah, they do.
And those are very expensive.
We looked at those, didn't we? At the conference.
Oh, yeah, we did. They had some amazing
Like a
things.
red box kind
Yeah.
of dispensary.
40 pound, no, that one.
Yeah, 40 or 50.
50,000.
You see those in big cities, like in train stations,
Yeah.
and where, like in San Francisco, they have that big transportation hub where the buses come in, on the second level, and trains come in underground, and cabs come in on the third level, and there's one in there. And if you belong to the San Francisco Public Library, you can just swipe your library card and literally check out a book. It's in, it's in one of those swirly things like you get potato chips, and they put like beach novels and things that commuters would read on their ride to and from work. And when you're finished, you put it in the return. And I don't know if the machine rescans it and puts it back, or a staff member has to go and do it with some regularity. But those make a lot of sense because there's people coming and going, and it's a very narrow purpose kind of. You get a certain kind of reading need with commuters, and you can get away with 40 different books and multiple copies of each one. But we are still talking with Toyota about putting one in their break room in Scott County, and they've got 5,000 people at the Toyota factory every single day, and so that's bigger than Stamping Ground and Sadieville put together. But that's a very narrow purpose. It's also inside, and they've got power and lights, and no one's going to bust in the side of the machine in the Toyota break room, I hope. So, yeah.
Unless they're bad drivers.
Did it?
I'll see myself out there.
Okay, Dan, you're up.
All right, well, last time we talked, we went over the facts. And here are the and we went over the facts that, oh, there's one more. We went over the facts that we had in the last plan, and we added some new ones. And so the first 5 were the same facts that you faced before. You all brought up workforce. Hiring is a challenge, and retaining is a challenge. COVID will have to be a fact for a long time, whether it's actually affecting us or we're still getting over what it did. We're still getting over what it did to the workforce. We're still getting over what it did to how people socialize and act. You know, COVID's going to be a part of your life for 5 years, even if we don't have another major breakdown.
On the rise again now?
Yeah. I trying to think of the most politically correct way of saying this one, just in case your judge was here.
Well, the newspaper is here.
Yeah, so, new state laws and local support
Yeah.
will affect you. You can't control them other than to lobby. But if they pass new laws that affect how libraries want to run and local political support, if you have it, good. If you don't, that's a challenge, even if they don't change the laws.
Did you read the Lexington Herald article today?
Yeah, yeah. That's a good article to share.
Yeah, it is. That was the best one I've seen so far. Yeah.
Unfortunately, the Herald Leader has a paywall, and
I
about
know.
80% of the people you forward that to can't see it.
But you can see it on the app
Yeah.
without the paywall.
So there are going to be people who read that and go, "What?
Yeah. I've already had a few people.
I didn't
had
know
no
anything
idea.
about this."
Yeah.
I know they will in Scott County. I mean, people are going to go crazy, and I'm hoping they'll all be calling and saying,
Yeah.
don't override this veto. This is not something we want. And then you asked to add that you've got a large county to serve, and that's a challenge from people getting here. It's a challenge from people going, pressure to build branch. You still want to serve people that are in the far outer areas of your county, even if it's a challenge and a long way to get there. Do you all have one of those local bus service, van service,
Like community action.
like community action?
I don't think
They got that
so.
one out here that serves the people. that are in
Just
their
the
community
seniors.
center.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
they
just
go out and pick
seniors.
those people up.
Do they?
They go out and pick them up, bring them in.
Yeah, but that's strictly senior.
Just seniors, yeah.
Seniors, yeah.
We have this community action bus service in central Kentucky. And it makes 6 or 7 stops in Georgetown. And it's like one of the vans the schools use to transport small teams. It's a 350, a Ford F-350 van with a big back end. And we struck a deal with them because we realized in our strategic plan, our problem was transportation. Getting the people to the library who needed to get to it, not taking the library to them.
Yeah.
And this bus service came along, and we cut a deal with them for advertising, where if they would add a stop to the library, and if you got off at the library, the bus was free. And we advertised their service in every publication we did. And now, if you want to go to Kroger from an apartment complex on the northern part of town, it's like 50 cents a ride, but they'll take you to Kroger. And then you go out and wait at the stop, and they'll
You
take
know,
you
but
back.
I think, now you check with them there, community, but I think about 4 years ago, it's been 4 years now, I think Northeast has another van to kind of run for that. You need to check out with them, they can tell you. But I think they do have something like that.
Wayne
that does.
County has something that
Yeah, I've
brings
seen
Yeah.
brings customers to, or brings
Yeah.
customers
I
to the
think they do
bank.
have something like that,
I've
maybe
never
one
seen
bus, because I think Northeast
One at
furnished the bus for
Yeah.
them. It's like a little van, like you said. But I think, you check with them just to make sure.
Little town?
If they
Is it
cancel
just
it
go
out,
park
they
somewhere?
did have
Well,
something.
that's what we're talking, we don't do it now. I mean, we have,
Oh.
Bookmobile has regular routes, but we're talking about buying like one of those giant RV type things like
Oh, you haven't
country
done that
music,
yet?
yeah.
Oh,
Like
I thought
country
you
music
already
singers
had.
have.
I'm sorry. Okay.
And that it goes in parks for the whole day.
Well, that's what I was wondering. We
And
could've done
it,
something like
it has a
that if
push
it
out,
worked.
and it's got
But we couldn't
newspapers,
go
and it's got
every little
Wi-Fi,
house.
and it's got,
Tried that.
Oh, you
a
tried that too? Okay,
librarian.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
And also, you have to look at the infrastructure in your county. You know, Scott County, the roads and the
Yeah.
means of transportation are
They have way more.
grossly different.
Oh, yeah,
than
it's,
our
we have
Eastern
significant,
Kentucky.
everywhere we would take that, there's a parking lot we can
Yeah,
park
That's-
this in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's what-
That has shore power we could plug into.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're rural, but nowhere near what you guys are like.
No,
That was part of the problem with our book.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, the roads were so,
Oh,
our
yeah.
bookmobile, you know, we would physically go to people's homes.
That's
And
what
the
I thought
roads
they did,
became
right?
such an issue, that we could no longer do it.
Well,
That
and
was
yeah,
one
we
reason.
had that trouble. We have a small car that we used to take and pick up from our two kiosks. And we will do porch drop-offs.
Mhm.
That librarian will do porch drop-offs and pickups because the regular size bookmobile, we've got a regular
Mhm.
bookmobile. It can't get into a lot of the
Mhm.
driveways of the people that need it most.
Yeah.
And these are shut-ins. These are people who, you know,
Well, we do
are
that.
real true
Like that, too. You
homebound.
don't know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We do that.
But, you know, you do a lot of stuff like that, it's one person at a time. And the people who are criticizing the libraries are saying, well, those numbers aren't very many. Well, but to that person, it's the world.
Yeah.
You know, do we really want to be judging the overall success on the fact that it's only 12 people a week?
Well, even, just say they don't have it, what about the people at the community center? There's probably 12, 15 people there every day. And they
Yes,
come-
human services does.
They do, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you go down there and take care
We're
of it?
getting to the people.
Okay, see, I didn't know you getting
I
there.
mean, maybe not all the people, but we're getting.
And
to
you
it.
guys do nursing home pickups and drop-offs, don't you? Yeah.
We did.
So,
That's good.
we do church, we've got a couple of church schools, and we do children's books that we rotate in and out of them. But again, those are small numbers compared to
Yeah.
the town wants a library, even
Mhm.
though they've only got 1,400 people in it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think we've encapsulated facts. I don't think there's anything new. Unfortunately, you know, we've added the whole COVID workforce, new state laws are all new everywhere since you did a strategic plan. So let's talk about,
Did you have an extra copy of that?
Yeah, extra copy.
Oh, no, I was looking at it.
no, I don't. I just bought enough for the board.
Okay, that's fine.
It's, you can have it.
No, it's all right.
I don't care. I thought
Oh.
we were-
I have mine at home, I didn't bring it.
So I took your strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities from the last plan. The good thing about doing your plan again is you've already spent a lot of time talking about these things. And if they're the same, we don't need to spend time talking about them again. And this is the combined feedback from the board, the staff, and the public surveys about what your strengths and weaknesses are. And I think if we can go down through these and get this reviewed tonight, we'll do the same thing with staff and then do the public survey. And I think we'll get a good sense of what's changed.
Yeah, these are from the first.
These are from your first plan,
Yeah.
yeah. So, you know, obviously, well, let's don't worry about weaknesses. Let's start on the strengths. Your facility was a strength back then. It's even better now. Staff, obviously the staff's the lifeblood of the library. I'm assuming you upgraded your technology when you built this building, so that's even better. You still have a bookmobile?
We don't have a bookmobile.
Okay.
We have 2 outreach vehicles now.
Children's programs and services,
Yes.
and your collection.
Yes.
So let's talk about, is there anything, since the last time we talked, any new strengths that you think we should add to the list? did building the building add something that you didn't have before?
Yeah,
Like what?
space, flexibility, yeah.
Meeting rooms?
Programming.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so all the others, except for the bookmobile, hinged on the facility, you know, that, all the other strengths, and even the weaknesses really hinged on the facility. That was the
Yeah.
big, you know, I would actually take our strategic plan and go through it and tick off every time we would, you know, meet a goal. And most of those were reflected back to the building.
That
That was the
reflected
biggest one.
To the limitations you had from
With
the
the
original
structure.
building, yeah.
Yeah. What do you all think?
I think
Strengths?
that now we have the ability to do dual programming, which makes a huge difference during the summer. I can have feeding going on, a program going on at the same time. We did it all last summer.
Yeah.
This summer, that's only gonna expand.
Yeah.
Is that because of space?
It's
Yes.
partly space. And the flow was another good thing. I feel like the safety of the building is
Safety is a
1,000 times
big
better.
one. That's
Our
strength.
teen area is
for
being
sure,
utilized in a
yes.
way it was never before, and that's in 20-some years of me witnessing it.
We had a lot of security issues, problems with the old facility, and security here is definitely a strength, yeah.
So I'm guessing, what did your occupancy numbers go from and to when you added this space?
I don't know the exact numbers, but it tripled.
So
For
that's
programming.
why the programming.
Yeah.
Because you've got, I mean, if you were doing it right, you had to have somebody at the door saying, oh, we've got too many people in the
We
building.
did, yeah.
Me.
Yeah.
We did.
But now I have the ability to do an adult program and provide
Yeah.
a children's program, which is babysitting service
Yeah.
at the same time.
We would have our doors
So-
open and have people outside because we had met our capacity
Yeah,
in the
we've done
building.
that many times.
You know, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it's a good problem to
but
have,
We
but
addressed that.
It's
with-
better to have a facility big enough to have them all
Not
inside.
turn anybody away.
Well, we actually had the repeat program this week that we did before that busted our doors and we had people in our parking lot waiting to get in. We repeated it this week and this room had the ability to hold the
Yeah.
numbers that we needed it to. So we didn't have to tell anybody that you have to wait outside and listen to the door.
Yeah, and I can see where you could have an adult program in one room and a teen or a kids program right here, and they're right here together.
And the lobby, that's why we designed the lobby that way, so we could have a third program space
Yeah.
in the lobby. So we could really have three at once.
Well, you can open the kitchen doors there and it's an actual flow, so mom don't have to leave little darling, she's still
Oh.
within speaking
So that
reach.
that connects these two rooms?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that connects these two rooms.
Oh, that's really
so-
smart.
And in the summer, we feed here, do programming there, so our flow is continuous.
And our meetings, we only had one study room, and so it was booked all the time. So now we have 5 study rooms with 3 spaces, not private, open spaces in between those. So really we have 8 now. And, I mean, they can attest.
Utilized a lot.
You know how it
Daily.
is,
Oh,
tutoring,
yeah.
depositions, counseling services, I mean,
State police.
Test proctoring.
state police
State
come and
police
do
chief.
training here, I mean,
Never done
We
that
went
before.
from 4 to 8 4 small, like just a table for 4. We had 4 of those, we now have 8. And we just opened our 4 new ones, and they're full every day after school,
Yeah.
tutors.
Well, we have our homebound teachers that actually utilize our spaces, their individual
Yeah.
private classrooms.
we have people that come and work. You
Yeah.
know, they'll
Oh,
reserve
I
it
do it
for
all the time.
8 hours just to work
We have several
here
people that come
in a quiet space.
sometimes every single day of the week, and they're in a study room.
Yeah,
And they're saying, you
working.
know, this is one of the only places in the county where there's stable internet, it's a quiet place, I'm able to actually get my work done here.
Yeah. You can't have a phone call at Starbucks.
Yeah.
You can, but everybody knows where you are.
Yeah.
You know, when in the background of your conference call, somebody's yelling, Vente coffee for Miller.
Well, we don't have a Starbucks here.
Yeah.
so.
So you're down at the gas station
Yeah, over
getting
here,
coffee.
Speedway, go to Speedway over there.
Yeah.
Masterpiece.
Do you all have a lot of test proctoring with people doing online school?
Not as much as we used to. It's dropped off. Yeah, we used to have about at least once a month or so. We would have quite a bit of proctoring, but it seemed like with COVID that really dropped off.
Yeah, I think
they
it
got a
dropped
little
off
more
for us,
lenient.
and they're picking back up.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
it now. All right. That's great. I mean, what this has done, just in a short period of time, is encapsulate why you expanded.
Yeah.
You know, you added 5 different facility space-related strengths that you didn't have before. And
Yeah.
I remember you didn't say any stuff like that when we talked about your strengths. Your strength was the building. It's a good library, but there were so many challenges with space and
Yeah.
meeting rooms
And honestly, if the 4th bullet was outreach service instead of bookmobile, then I would say all of those are still there.
strength.
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah.
And we can change it for this one.
Yeah,
Well,
we
yeah,
should.
I mean, so let's change bookmobile to outreach.
yes.
Actually, I think our outreach services are stronger.
Stronger. It
And they're
encompasses so
more
much
efficient
more.
now than what
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
before.
Well, we do a lot in COVID. We got into the habit
Yeah.
of, we don't take the bookmobile out, we just load up what people are asking for and
Yeah.
take it and drop it off at the front door of the facility. You know, the nursing homes, we couldn't go in. And
Yeah.
so we were just taking the small outreach vehicle out, dropping off 4 or 5 tubs of books, picking up and leaving, and that was much more efficient than getting the bookmobile out.
Well, the patrons prefer that as well, at least
They
here,
do.
they will ask for that versus a
Yeah.
bookmobile. They would rather have the drop off and not.
Yeah,
And you know,
The
from
more streamlined.
a fiscal perspective, that the bookmobile operates as its own branch.
Yeah.
So you have to have a specific collection just for the bookmobile, and it's expensive to rotate those books in and out. And then you have dual copies in the building, and then you're weeding more frequently.
Yeah.
So, you know, it eliminated a lot of that overhead that we had.
Well, it also eliminated the bookmobile as a building or a facility that is in constant need of repair.
Yeah.
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 Why is it that bookmobiles are always
Always
broken down?
terrified.
I mean, everybody's bookmobiles are broken down.
Just like the ice cream machine.
Yeah.
They don't mind. Yeah. It was
One of those
constant,
things.
yeah.
Let's talk about weaknesses, and we can always come back if you think of something new. I think we take facility off the weakness
Yeah,
list.
for sure. Absolutely.
What about your hours? Did you adjust your hours any with the new facility?
No, we did adjust our hours, and then we had a pandemic.
Yeah.
And so then we were open at limited hours. So we haven't reached that full capacity yet. And we still need to hire some more people
Yeah.
to have those longer hours.
Are you back to where you were in terms of being open?
No,
So that's still a weakness.
Yeah.
Affected by a lot of things, but you're not open as long as you'd like to be.
no,
Collection.
no, that's not a weakness. We've weeded, how many
You're
times have we
welcome.
weeded? 12?
Quite a few, yeah.
Caleb's touched that collection more than he ever cares to talk about.
Okay. So, when we closed on the bookmobile, Dina and I touched every book on that thing 3 times.
Two times
Trying to
too
get the
many.
inventory straightened out. I know my collection.
And it really is, when I first came, only the director ordered.
Yeah.
So there was no diversity, there was no,
We had lots of cat.
we had a lot of Christmas cat books.
Every
And Christmas
color
cat
in our
books.
ear.
And so, you know, I delegated that and said, Dina order, Caleb order. At that time, we had a bookmobile, you order. You know, I shouldn't be doing the ordering. So our collection is great.
Did you find out, I need to ask this question so it's not a leading question. Did the shutdown for COVID and the way people changed their library habits change your view of your collection?
Yes, yeah.
I've heard a lot of libraries say they found out they need a lot fewer books than they've got because people were wanting the same books over and over again. And when times were hard and it was a pandemic and you were locked in, people were reading certain kinds of books more often.
Mhm.
And that certain checkouts went way up.
Yeah, and Caleb runs those collection reports, you know,
Yeah.
and we'll say, we don't need 500 inspirational fictions now, you know, they're just not gonna go out, so let's use that shelving space for, nonfiction is huge here.
Well, we
So-
found,
Oh,
we
really?
found that
He's good because he orders good,
Good.
yeah.
when
material.
people weren't here to browse and walk through the stacks and look at a spine and say, oh, that looks interesting, that's a different way of picking a book than going through I mean, I'm very computer literate. I hate going through the online catalog trying to find something.
Yeah.
I mean, if I know exactly the name of the book and it's a book the library should have, I can find it. But if I'm looking for, give me some good examples of a new mystery series to read because I've read everything that, so-and-so has written, Michael Connolly cannot write books fast enough. Somebody needs to light a fire under it. Because
That's a weakness that we have as our publishers, and I don't know if you experienced that in Scott
Yeah.
County. We can't get our books
Yeah.
in a timely fashion. And we've talked to other libraries, it's not just us. We primarily order Baker Taylor.
Yeah.
But all the publishing houses, they're so behind on orders, and so people will complain and say, Walmart already has it and you don't have it, and we have to try to explain how the book publishing
Right.
industry operates and how orders are placed. But in that regard, I would say collection is a weakness because we can't get our books quick enough. But I wouldn't say the material in the collection is a
Well,
weakness.
remember, weaknesses are internal. You can't control the
Oh, well then,
publishers.
no, not
You
weakness.
can control what's in your collection.
Yeah.
You can throw things away, you can put new things in it, but the publishers are I would say in the threats category, I'm gonna add supply chain. Because we're all getting used to it. I don't know about you guys. We go to the grocery store with a general idea.
Yeah.
Because there's a good chance that you're not gonna find chicken breasts,
Yeah.
or you're not gonna find mild sausage, or you're not gonna find egg noodles. So you have to go with that menu item now becomes something different because we can't get egg noodles. And I think supply chain is a threat in every industry, every nonprofit, because you are relying on publishers to print the books and ship the books. You're relying on a supply chain to get them to you, and they may or may not get here before they get to Walmart. And we know they're going to Walmart first because Walmart's buying 9 million copies, and they're going to the
Yeah.
Walmart distribution centers and being sent out from there.
Yeah.
So the publishers want to get it there first.
Mhm.
So, but what I'm hearing a lot is that people changed their reading habits during the pandemic, and they're reading different kinds of books. And in Montgomery County, they said, no one ever came and asked us give me a recommendation of something to read. And during the pandemic, because they have a drive-through window, they would have people drive up and say, can you recommend something? And the librarian staff in the window would say, well, what do you like? And, have you read this? No, okay. Come back in 20 minutes and I'll pull a half dozen copies and let you look through them. And just people are, because they're not coming in and walking up and down the stacks and looking at what's available and what's on the shelf, their reading habits have changed. And who knows, is it that way forever? I'm also hearing a lot of public librarians talk about, we used to say, well, that book hasn't been checked out since 1982, but it's a really good book, and someday someone might want it.
We don't do that.
And-
That's our strength. We do not.
If somebody
Hang
comes
on.
in, we'll get it for you. We'll find it in another library and get it to the interlibrary loan. But let's not keep it on the shelf for the fact that, and let's put something else on the shelf, like manga, or like comic books, or like more CDs and DVDs and whatever, because that's what people are asking for.
Yeah.
And when we did our big renovation 4 years ago, we put half our books in storage and moved into, all the library moved into the newest section when it was finished. Then we renovated the old section, and half the library moved back. And all of that moving, we had thousands of books that the librarians were saying, This one's not going back on the shelves when we're back in there. Even though we're gonna have twice as much space, we want every shelf to have space at the end.
Yeah.
And you know what? Except for one person who's crazy, every library has that person. People aren't coming in saying, where are all the books? You know, because the books they're asking for, we've got.
Oh, but they are here.
Yeah.
Yes, here.
Oh, you don't have that book from 1987? You know, the green one, that children's book
Yeah.
I read.
It's that they don't seem to understand the difference between a library and an archive.
Yeah,
We
we're
are
not a
not an
museum.
archive.
We don't hang on to things. No, we I mean,
Yeah, real frequently,
it's,
yeah.
you know, it's an ongoing process. Some libraries choose, we're gonna weed every 3 years. We weed frequently.
Yeah. Well, and that's good, because it's hard to find a book on a shelf that's packed
Yeah.
end to end.
That's true.
Yeah.
You know, 10 shelves or 8 shelves high end to end. You know, it's like going to Half Price Books in Lexington. I can't ever find anything there because they've got the books
Yeah.
jammed in there.
And we had academic shelving before. We had 8 or 9 feet shelving,
Yeah.
so the only person that could reach the top was me. So we never used the top shelf, and then, you know, people with mobility issues, they couldn't reach the bottom. So it was pointless. So all these in the middle were crammed as tight as you could get
We
them.
have a bunch of academic shelves still, and our patrons complain, and they want to know, why can't, and our teen shelves look like yours out here.
Mhm.
And our main shelves are academic shelves, and they complain, why can't you use those kind of shelves instead of these?
Yeah.
Because most people can't
Reach, no.
And you like to be able to walk along and look and
Yeah.
browse. So let's talk about technology. Obviously, you've got a lot more of it. It's newer, it's better. You've got good stable internet. How are you on
Better.
public computers after reopening?
Great. Better, yeah.
We're finding that fewer people are coming in using our public computers than before the pandemic.
I wouldn't say that here. We're still relying on our public computers, yeah.
What kind of a wait time do people have at your busiest times for public computers?
We don't have a wait time.
Okay.
I've never seen anybody wait. Have you? Since we
No,
We
we're
used to.
seeing a lot of people bringing their own laptops
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, you see that too.
And
And that's what we looked at. Should we get tablets? Should we get laptops to check out, you know? Because that service is evolving. People want to sit in a lounge chair and work, you know, and not sit at these public computers.
We found, and a lot of libraries found, that when you invest as much money in your Wi-Fi and your connections inside the building, not just the pipe, but you know, how many places you can connect, and having enough to cover the whole building well, and having enough so that if there's 200 people in the building and they're all on their phone and their laptop,
Yeah.
you have to build for max capacity,
Yeah.
not 9 in the morning and 6 at night, but you gotta build for 2:30 to 6 during the school week. And when we did that, our public computer use went down, and we have lots of people sitting around. Because they know you come here, the Wi-Fi's good, I can always get on.
Yeah. We had that, and we had dead space here in the old building where,
Yeah.
you know, certain access points wouldn't work, and so or they would work, but there were so many hard walls that it couldn't
Yeah.
get through, so, no, that's.
And
take
that's
that
where
off
doing a
windows.
renovation or an addition, in our case, we had all the ceilings torn out anyway, so the tech people came in and put all new Wi-Fi antennas up in the ceiling, so that now when we reopened, there'll be tons of capacity.
Yeah,
So would you say technology is no longer a weakness?
no longer a weakness.
So children's services, you're obviously doing more.
Yeah. I don't know why that was on weakness.
I was gonna say, but wait a minute here.
Yeah.
All right,
No,
now let's
I-
see, I'm on 2 lists.
I
Well,
think it had
a
a
lot of
lot
it
to
hinged
do
on the
with-
building.
What probably
Well,
should
yeah,
have
Yeah.
space to do
and
more.
Number of staff in
Yes.
order to do
Yeah.
that. We can
I
go
think
on
that-
with more staff.
I think it had a lot more to do with capacity than desire
It
and
did.
staff.
And, yeah, and so we have applications right now to hire another children's services staff
Our
person.
programming's been so busy, we haven't been able to.
We haven't been able to.
Too busy to, you need help so bad, you're too busy to
That's
hire help.
exactly, that's exactly what it is.
So, I don't wanna say the services are a weakness, staffing is a weakness.
Yeah, well, I think that deserves its own, it's a fact, and staffing shortages and issues with hiring are a threat, but it's also a weakness if you're not able to find the time and make the time to interview people and hire people and to keep people in the loop for filling the jobs that come open. And
Well, and it comes to, like this weekend, we did a Saturday program, which was really successful. However, I'm the only person that does them, so that puts me into overtime,
Yeah.
which means I have to take it off sometime this week, and I have back-to-back classes all week, so I don't even know when I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, so I would say staffing.
Yeah.
Staffing, quantity of staffing.
staffing levels.
Staffing levels is a weakness, yeah.
And it's important to make sure so the staff doesn't think you're not talking about
Right.
them.
Yeah.
You're talking about the ability to fully staff for programs.
Because we don't just read and nap all day, Dan,
No, you don't.
contrary to
You don't
popular
just sit in
belief.
comfy chairs by the fireplace and
We
read all
just
day?
read and nap.
I wanna
That's why we're
get
so
a
well
nap.
rested. We're all glowing.
What about adult services? Are you all doing as much as you'd like to?
I think we could do more. I mean, I think you all would agree we
Absolutely,
could do more.
But again, it comes into, I'm
Staffing.
the first people to do.
Yeah, now we're hinged, where we used to hinge on a building, now we're hinging on people to do it, you know? Which also hinges on what's gonna happen with Senate Bill 167, so I know we should obviously put that in the threat category.
Yeah, I mean, that really is, that's a threat. And threat isn't necessarily a, big, mean, screaming person in a hockey mask and a knife. It threatens the way you do business. And it could be a malicious threat, it could also just be a threat. And so Senate Bill 167 is a threat because it changes how you do business. And it may change how you fund staffing because you're not able to keep up with funding the way you had before. And I think adult services
That's what killed the
it's got to be a weakness because of your aging population. Remember last time we talked about your
Yeah.
population going from a true pyramid to a pregnant
Yeah.
pyramid. That's people getting older and they're rising to the top, and you'll reach a point where your county looks more like this, where you'll have all these people living longer and everybody's having fewer kids. And, do we turn the primary focus of the library from kids and students to adults and seniors? Because that's who the majority of your patrons are. I don't know the answer to that question. We don't know if they'll come and use the library as much as kids with
But
families.
it's full.
So any other weaknesses? Anything you've identified now that you've built the new building?
Weak politicians.
Well, that's,
Weak support.
weaknesses are internal.
When they are internal, we're stuck with them.
Yeah, well. All right, opportunities. Hours make a lot of sense because you've got the opportunity to get the hours back to your, the way you would like them to be. I think we can scratch facilities off as an opportunity. I think technology is always an opportunity because new technology comes along and it allows you to do things that you didn't do before.
I think facility is still an opportunity, because we are still learning new ways to use this facility. I
Okay.
mean, we've been in contact with, traveling exhibitions and those kinds of things that we weren't able to do in the old building.
Blood drive was a good one.
The blood
Yeah.
drive, yeah,
Yeah.
so like we're learning how to use this space in ways that we couldn't call the National Museum, Institute of Museums or whatever it is and say, hey, what kind of displays do you have for this population? Because we couldn't get them anywhere.
Yeah.
I could have heaved myself on those
Yeah.
8-foot shelves and put them up there, but, so yeah, it's still an opportunity,
Okay.
for sure.
We attracted, we applied for the traveling Holocaust Museum exhibit and got it,
Did you? Wow.
and it's been rescheduled twice because of
Oh,
COVID. But the reason we got it is that we have that gigantic community room. That's this room times 3.
Yeah.
And with foldable walls in the middle.
Yeah.
And a stage and a kitchen, and there's a minimum square footage they
Yeah.
had to have for that. And we had it, and we
We need to go see that.
Yeah.
Well, I applied for that, the waiting list is now 4 years out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
And and like you said,
It's
the
in the
spatial
works.
requirements are very specific, yeah, for a lot of these.
And they awarded it to 2 places in each state in this round, and we're one of the 2.
Remember, because when you were judge, I asked you if we could use the community center
do
for,
that.
for an exhibit, but the length was too long, you
Yeah.
know? It was like a minimum of a month or 6
Yeah, we have to
weeks.
block out that meeting room for
Yeah.
like 45
You
days.
couldn't use that facility
For that long.
For that long.
And you have to have a room that you can do that with.
Yeah,
And, you
And
know,
lock it.
with only
Protect
2
it.
rooms, you guys couldn't give up your entire
no,
meeting room space for 45 days because that would affect too many programs. We
Yeah.
have other rooms that we can squeeze people into. What about, I think programs is an opportunity because if you all are like most people, we quit doing programs in person completely when we closed.
Mhm.
And then we're just now, while we were closed, we started the renovation.
Yeah.
And so we're just now doing in-person programs again. But our staff is looking at it as an opportunity to say, well, we didn't do whatever for 2 whole years and nobody died. So maybe we don't need to do that.
yeah, we've been doing that, like, hey, let's
We've been reevaluating.
reevaluate, yeah.
And what are new programs that, have come along either because of COVID or, what are other people doing that we can now do because you have different space? So I think programs is a real opportunity for every library because we literally, there's 2 or 3 programs that we're able to kill because nobody wanted to, but nobody wanted the programs anyway. And since we didn't do them for 2 whole years, we don't have to bring it back.
Yeah. And librarians are good thieves when it comes to programming.
Oh.
So I follow Scott Kelly on Facebook, and I'm always like, oh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea,
Still their idea.
How can we make that work on our scale? Yeah.
We call that the case method. Copy and steal everything.
Yeah.
I've actually had that happen to us.
We've had that happen.
With my exact helper repeated, just changed the name with my
Yeah.
spelling, misspelling.
We're like, you couldn't even change the name?
Yeah, could you at least
Yeah, you stole everything
change
from
the
us.
font and the colors so that it didn't look just
Yeah, you
like
could have
that?
corrected,
You guys do a lot of really good after-school and schools out programming. Because I follow
Yeah.
you on Facebook and Instagram, and you're doing a lot for kids when they don't have anything to go home to.
Yeah, we do.
And they don't have any resources, they don't have any
food.
food,
Yeah.
that's our big thing here,
Yeah.
is feeding. Yeah, we try to fill those gaps as best as we can with 8 people.
And there's a million more things that I can think of I would love to do.
Yeah.
Well, that's where that copy and steal, if a library's doing it, call them up and say, can you send me what
We do that,
work
yeah.
you did? So we don't have to, we don't have 8 people here.
Yep.
If we could get the whole program on paper, all we have to do is change the
Yeah, we've had
location
people
and
call
start.
us, can you send us your format for that? Work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
When we're having some of the things like the feeding and so forth, should we maybe consider volunteers? Or would they
We've
have to?
been down this long and slippery, dreadful road.
With that,
Volunteers,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, with the summer feeding, the state regulations are so
Yeah,
hard
they are.
It would be hard.
that I would rather do it with my 2 college students who are absolutely terrified to do it wrong because
Oh, okay.
then,
I do
a
just-
bunch that really doesn't care either way. And then risk getting the funding for that pool.
Yeah. Volunteers are a hard thing. In a lot of instances, you tie up more staff managing the volunteers
Yeah.
than the work the volunteers do, you know, so you end up, the staff members could have done the work for less work.
Yeah, looking down that
Then
road.
there's that issue with underage kids of volunteers and screening and safety and,
Yeah.
you know, those of us that are type A and well, I just have to do it myself because nobody else can do it as good as I can. You know, that's part of it, but the bigger part of it is by the time you supervise 3 or 4 volunteers, it's really harder to do that than it is just to do it yourself.
Yeah.
We had a volunteer program here that encompassed teens, and one year, was it 13, 14? I had a schedule for them, but I found myself having to go back and redo their work because they were here
Yeah.
just to hee-haw.
Yeah.
So instead of making our lives easier.
Teens, I was thinking older people.
Well, let's talk about threats. And I didn't bring the threats from last time because threats should be the wolf at the door, not what we had to deal with before. And supply chain, we talked about. Senate Bill 167. I think we have to add COVID as a threat because it can come back. It can cause us to close. It can cause us staffing issues. It can cause us all kinds of things. Threats are entirely external. You have no control over them. You just need to be aware that they're out there.
Was population on our last plan?
Yeah, population and economy were
We're
on the
on there.
last one. And, you know, they're facts, but they can also be threats.
Yeah.
So do
I
you all
think that's a threat, yeah. I mean, that's our tax base. We don't have any new industry coming into this part of the state.
The only good thing libraries have going for them, libraries and schools tax on property.
Yeah.
And however many square miles of property you have in Lawrence County, it's gonna be the same square miles you have 100 years from now if they don't change the borders. So you're always gonna have somebody paying property taxes. The danger is the economy gets so bad people default, go bankrupt, and don't pay their taxes. And that's a bigger problem than a strategic plan can address. If we reach the point where people aren't paying the property taxes, we're teetering.
And delinquent
Society.
taxes was a growing when I was in office, how it is now.
Yeah.
It was getting worse every year.
Yeah.
Could we add negative publicity as a threat?
Yeah.
'Cause that seems to be a frequent issue that we have here. Negative and false publicity.
And, you know, it's what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. But it's
Yeah.
also the extreme right-wing movements toward controlling access to information. And that always starts with negative publicity. That's making up a problem that doesn't exist. Saying that we have a library full of books about whatever, when in reality we don't, but because someone's brother-in-law's kid checked out a book about my 2 dads, and they brought it to, you know, complained about it, then all of a sudden the library's full of pornography.
Yeah.
And there's a segment of the population that if someone says it, then it must be true.
Yep.
Well, he
It's on
said that you're
Facebook.
checking books out to 3-year-olds about, you know, being gay.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, we're not. Well, he said so, it must be true, you know, so, it's, you know, it's individuals, it's political parties, it's church
Social media.
groups that
Yeah.
don't want, and they're kind of missing the whole point of what the public library is about.
Yeah.
You totally have control over whether your kids come here and check books out. That's the control.
That's exactly right.
You don't have to use this facility. It's here for everyone to make that choice. And everyone making their own choice is not real popular with those groups. They're more about, we want to make the choice for you. And that's, I mean, that goes, I'm picking on right wing, that's equally true on the left
Oh, yeah.
in some parts of the country, where the left doesn't want you to have access to certain kinds of material. And that's not right either.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about you get to choose, it's about the individual gets to choose, the family gets to choose. So, yeah, negative and false publicity. So let's talk really quick. Just if we were to write goals today, and this is kind of I'm being transparent in the way strategic planning works. You know, we're going to get all this feedback. We kind of know what it's going to be. And we're going to use the feedback to write these goals. But we kind of know what we want to do, even before we get the feedback. And the feedback backs up what we kind of know. And so let's spend 5 minutes and say, if we're going to write down some goals right now for the next 3 to 4 years, get us past COVID, what would those be? No great detail, no deadlines or who's going to do it. Well, the library director's going to do it all, so.
When I wake up,
When you wake up from
For
your
my
nap
nap.
after reading?
programming goal. Outreach goal.
You know, you're cutting into my nap time seriously. Cutting into my speedway time.
Technology goal. Staffing.
How well did you, and the pandemic was unprecedented, so none of us had a plan for it. How well did you adapt to, after you figured out how you were going to do things, communicating that to the public?
On a scale?
It's a little bit different from you. I mean, we were in the process of renovations.
Yeah,
That was,
it
we were
was-
closing
we're in-
because of renovations, not just because of COVID.
Yeah. So we closed for construction, and so it was a unique situation. I would say 7, 6 to
Were you
7.
already closed when pandemic hit?
No.
But you were about
We
to?
were open with limited services because we stayed in the building
Okay.
during construction.
Some libraries have said they felt like they handled all of it well, given that it was so sudden.
Yeah.
And there was no good advice. No one was saying, do this. KDLA was saying, well, we think you should follow the local rules and well, they conflict with each other.
Yeah.
And, the FDA has completely different rules from what local and state are doing. And, but libraries did a fantastic job of figuring it out and doing something. We decided to follow the public schools.
We did follow the guidance of the public schools. And a lot of libraries, us included, the board approved a policy that during the pandemic, as long as it was an official pandemic, that the director could, fluctuate these policies.
Yeah.
Because normally it's a director-board approval relationship. But in a pandemic, when things would change literally every day, we couldn't have a special meeting every day. So during that time, it gave me more flexibility to make those decisions. Because typically we don't close unless it's an emergency or a board-approved holiday. And we couldn't get in here to have those meetings. So I feel like we did as well as we could with the pandemic.
We had some libraries have said what they feel like they didn't do well was communicate to the public because they just weren't ready for it. They didn't have a plan for how do we communicate to the public that we're closed.
Yeah.
And how do we communicate to the public once we're back up and doing something? How do we, how do we do all of that when the staff isn't in the building?
Mm-hmm.
And they felt like they needed a plan for how to communicate during an emergency.
I think the pandemic is like any other emergency. If you have a shooting or anything, you step back and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. We should have seen, we should have been prepared. Next time we'll do this, next time we'll do that. And,
Do you see that as a goal to have a better plan for emergency?
yeah, and actually, I think policies should be a goal. I think that we I don't know if Scott County does, but we use Campbell County kind of as our guiding post on policies because their policy manual is so phenomenal. And so we have a lot of policies that we need to.
You know what we do?
adopt
We
here.
started when Patty took over. We go over 1 or 2 policies at every meeting.
Yeah.
And that means every 2 years, we're touching every policy. And staff comes in with red line changes. They're bringing the existing policy, and in red are their recommended changes.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about it, and almost always will approve as amended by the staff with these changes. And then they go in and change it, and then it's updated as of the date of that meeting.
Yeah.
And we just have that meeting discipline, because it's hard to go over
It is
all your
hard.
policies.
Yeah.
And you end up shooting yourself if you have to go through all of them and get them all ready for one big meeting. And then the board is like, I don't want to do this anymore. So we do 1 or 2 at every meeting, and I've been there long enough that, we've come all the way around and we're doing them again.
Yeah.
And that's just a really good way. And that was a strategic plan item for us years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal was review every policy or write new ones. We do it at every meeting, and in 2 years, we'll have it completely redone.
Yeah, that should be a goal
So,
for
okay.
us.
Well, because I think, what's going to happen is all the feedback's going to come back and support what you have just said. And so it's now really a matter of do 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 5 goals. One of them, policies being like just a long running one. So you've got 4 goals, and if you put staffing / hours, evaluating hours, and resolve staffing and evaluate your hours, and be open longer as you can.
Yeah.
Then you've got 5 really good goals, and the staff feedback is going to tell us much of what you all have already said, and the public feedback. One of the questions we'll ask in the online survey is, do you use the library differently now than you did before the pandemic? And what services, do you use services more or less now than during the pandemic, or before the pandemic? And that may tell you something, it may not. Montgomery County, it really didn't tell us anything we didn't already know.
Yeah.
In Scott County, I think it's going to tell us we're getting ready to do our plan. I think it's going to tell us because we're seeing differences in how people use the library. They aren't using the public computers. We've got 30 public computers, and there's never somebody at every seat, and there used to be. We had to set time limits, and the computer automatically shut down because the next person had to come in. And we haven't had to do that since we reopened. Now, we don't know if that'll go back. But.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to send you a link to look at for the public poll, and then I'll work with you on a date for doing staff input.
Okay.
And then I think we kind of put all this down and take a look at it and see what we think in terms of, the hard part is what's most important. What comes first on the list in terms of dates. It can't be 5 goals that all happen at the same time,
Yeah.
or you'll end up with a director taking lots of naps because she retires. So you got to then spread it out over time. What are the most important to do now, and what can wait?
Okay.
You guys are one of the few libraries advocating strongly for not passing Senate bill.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see the usual suspects aren't out there pushing hard.
No, very apathetic response.
And I don't know if it's apathetic or they're afraid.
What's there to lose?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of personal for us.
yeah.
It's personal for everybody. It's personal for all the libraries. And education goes a long way. So we just want people to be informed and educated about what's going on and not just listen to political mouthpiece.
Yeah. It's not talking points. These are people's lives. There are people, you guys see them every day. There are people that rely on this library for their livelihood, for their well-being.
We just want to do our jobs.
Yeah.
We just want to be librarians. We just want to do our jobs
You know what?
and be left alone.
What's at the core of it, too? Good library boards and good librarians can just solve problems without all the political debate. A problem presents itself, you have the resources and the people to deal with it, you do it. And nothing else works like that. Schools don't work that way. Now, schools within their microcosm of their school building, solve a lot of problems without the administration. But government doesn't work this way. You don't just fix something that's broken. You've got 9 meetings and 3 readings, and 2 different people have to look at it and give their opinion before you can tighten the screw that stops the leak. And here you just turn the water off, and they don't like that.
We always say what's best for the patron, what's best for the community, what's best for the public.
I think a public library is truly the only
It's the
taxpayer-supported entity
Yeah.
that truly functions to make the life of our patrons better. That is our only goal.
Yeah.
And within your staff, we're all diverse. We all have different political, religious,
Yeah.
whatever beliefs. And we check that at the door. And we serve the common good. And that's what's at thread.
Well, it goes back to good old Benjamin Franklin, and why he founded the first public library was because people didn't have access to it. And putting all of his friends' books in one building and letting other people check them out was a way for people to get access to knowledge that they didn't have. And, free public library.
Well, knowledge is power, and power is scared.
And power scares the politicians at every level, apparently. They're scared to death of you librarians. Did you see that meme on the internet about, I got an email of the Ukrainian librarians, got an email from the Ukrainian public library that the program had been canceled because they were under attack,
Yeah,
and
I
we'd
saw
get
that.
right back to it as soon as we could. It's like, only librarians in the middle of a war would say, we'll get back to you.
As soon as we vanquish our enemies.
Yeah, as soon as we vanquish our enemies.
Yeah.
I love that. All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
You guys, this is a great building.
Thank you.
This is really a good building.
Thank you.
We're getting ready to open our addition, and one of the things that we did, the staff doesn't believe